Good day there, all my viewers out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Ricky Robotski, and this is the Ricky Robotski Show. So, you may remember last time I was hounding you guys about following your dreams and having resources and maybe possibly planning right. So, I got a special treat for you guys today for one of the resources that you would need to follow your dreams, and that's financial planning. So, but before we dive in, you know the deal. Let's roll it. Welcome back to the Ricky Robotski Show. Today we're talking about something that impacts one of us: money, financial planning, and building a stronger future. My guest is Antonio Jenkins, founder of Navigation Planning Group, where he helps individuals, families, and business owners navigate through important financial decisions and work toward long term financial success. We're going to discuss money mindset, common financial mistakes, building with, and practical people that to improve their financial future. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Antonio. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, hello.
It is
Thank
such a pleasure to have you on the show. I really, really appreciate you. And today we just want to talk about following dreams, but also what requires to follow your dreams and resources. And I know you're the man to be able to answer those questions for me.
Absolutely. I love helping people navigating life because everyone deserves to live their best life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, Tony, just before we get started, though, tell us a little bit about yourself and Navigation Planning Group.
All right. Well, I've been in the financial industry for a little over a decade now. Learning about money has always been something that I've always been curious about, even as a kid. My parents talked about money a lot, and even as a kid, I had my own bank account. I was putting money in my account. My parents was monitoring my account. So, I came from a family that talked about money, unlike most families. I had a large family. My parents had 6 kids. They've been together for over 40 years.
Wow.
So, I come from, loving family, just like myself, me and my wife, we met in high school. We've been together for over 20 plus years. We've been married for 16 years. We have 5 kids. And so, it's almost like marrying my parents, but, I just wanted to instill, in my kids what my parents taught me, but most importantly, share that with the world, right? Navigation life came about, navigating people through life. And, that's what I'm here to help people, show people that they deserve to live their best life.
Exactly, and appreciate that. And then also, what we deem here in the U.S. is the American dream. Is that right?
Absolutely. Everyone deserves that. It's the land of the freedom, home of the
It's
opportunities.
yes, absolutely. And a lot of people, when following their dreams, they don't seem to realize the resources that they have right in front of their eyes. And that is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today was when we follow our dreams or building the American dream or wherever you're watching from, whatever country you live in, building that dream. Tony, what is the biggest financial mistake you see everyday people make and how can they avoid it?
Well, one of the things that I see a lot in people is not having discipline, right?
Mm,
You gotta be disciplined when you want to live out your dreams, right? Working with a financial professional like myself, right? Have them structure a plan where it's protection first and investing second, right? So they have a plan. Doesn't matter if life throws them a curveball, but they're still navigating throughout life.
okay. And then so when you say navigating through life, and starting a dream, like so let's say for example, I have a I have a dream of opening up my own bakery.
Right.
And obviously I need funds to make that dream happen. At what point during this dream of opening a bakery would I need to, let's say, I want to do I save first? Do I reach out to the banks? What is my first step?
The first step is always having a plan, right? Having a plan around this business that you're wanting to structure. Most importantly, you need reserves, right? You don't want to go into a business and be really like cash poor. You want to make sure you have some reserve to get you to those difficult times. The SBA is a great place to go for startup businesses, right? They'll be able to assist you with getting a loan and making sure that you have liquidity to open this business up. But you also want to work with someone like myself to put a plan together, making sure there's certain things put in place with this business.
Okay. And then so Tony, when they first start to decide that, hey, I have the cash flow, I have the money, the funds to start a business, with someone starting from, let's say, ground zero, what is usually the first step this person should do? Like, how much a percent of their funds, I guess, the gains they should put aside to start? If that's actually a question you can answer, because I know it depends on the
It,
person, the job, a lot of factors.
what I typically see with a lot of my business clients that starting up businesses, they're really reinvesting all of those funds back into the business, right? Because this business is their cash generator, right? So they want to make sure that whatever proceeds that are coming in from the business, they set aside a small portion for reserve, but the remaining is going back inside the business.
Hmm. Okay. And then how much of my next question, and is going to go back to, I'll probably jump back to this one later, but my next question is how much of financial success is about money and how much is about mindset?
I love this question. All right. And a lot of you have misconceptions about money. All right. Money is just potential opportunity. All right. So when it comes to mindset versus money, I would say 80% mindset.
Hmm.
The right mindset creates opportunity that leads to money, resource. Well, will lead to resources, right? With the right mindset, it's just a matter of time before you get access to the resources, right? Money does not create opportunity; it's just potential opportunity. So you got to have a positive mindset to get to where you want to go in this life.
And that positive mindset, and like, I was pretty positive that, and this is just an example, to open up a bakery, the Robotski Bakery,
Yes.
and that mindset that I had to open this and to be financially adept enough to keep this business flowing, how would I guess my question is, when it comes to financial success, what does that look like for a first time business owner? Like, what does actual, because I have the mindset of, yes, I want this business to succeed, but when it comes to financial success, what does that look like without struggling? Like, how do I know, like, what has to happen?
I love that question. So the first indicator is typically you paying all your bills on time,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the first indication, right? After you're paying all your bills on time, from that point, you want to make sure you're at least putting 20 to anywhere from 10 to 20% of your profits set aside in some type of emergency account, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I will consider you do is find someone else in that same industry that's doing well, right? Because they've already seen some of the traps and some of the mistakes. If you can get that information ahead of time, that will allow your business to grow even faster, right?
Mm.
A mentor is like a shortcut to success,
Mm.
right? So finding someone that's already doing what you're doing.
And for the new viewers or the young viewers, especially, like I said earlier, we talked off record on the show about when you ask your kids what would they do with $2,000, and if some of us don't have access to $1,000. Some viewers are actually completely, maybe even in the negative,
Right.
and they have this passion, this dream of opening up this business. However, what if? What do you recommend if they run into something to where they don't have the 10 to 20% to put down, set aside? What would be a more reasonable, if you can't do 10% or if you can't do 20%, what amount or what percentage would be, I say, a safety net, to create a safety net? Would it be, could you do, I mean, I know it's going to take longer, but could you do 5% at a time? Could you do what, I mean, business loans, I guess?
I mean, there are business loans out there, but they do also look at what you already have in place personally. So they'll
Mm,
take a look at your assets. They'll take a look at your savings, your investment account, your retirement account, right? So they'll take all those things in consideration if you seek out a business loan. Um, you mentioned about my kids, right? My kids having $1,000, $2,000, right? Well, I know that one day my kids are going to inherit everything that I put in place today.
hmm
I want to make sure that they understand how money works, right? Because if they're just being given money and not have the knowledge, it's just it's just all going down the drain. I want to make sure they have the proper tools one day, so when they get this asset, they can take it to the next level.
mm. And that next level would be what I like to say generational wealth. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And then when you're creating generational wealth, I know this that I follow. I'm not for sure if you know who Susie Orman is, but
Yes,
I used to listen to her a long time ago, and I remember when she would always say the word save, 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 but I was so paycheck to paycheck that I'm like, Susie, I can't freaking save if it saved my life. And she would always say, but can you afford not to save? And
that's true.
I never understood that.
Yeah,
What is your take on that?
you have to save, right? Because there's a crisis right around the corner, and if you can't address that crisis, it's going to hit pretty hard. It's going to
Mm,
stay, right? It's better for you to do it now because later, unfortunately, later is most of us don't have later, right? We don't know what tomorrow looks like,
hmm
right? So we got to address the problem today, right? R- Rather, let's go out and work more hours, right? Figure out how to generate more income, but we got to be able to put away for an emergency because that day is coming.
Exactly. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you out there watching, generational wealth and generating extra income would probably most likely be your other alternative if you're struggling with following your dreams and you feel like they're not coming fast enough. A lot of us don't want to take the sacrifice to generate that wealth, meaning by simply getting a second job or finding
Yeah.
another side hustle to support that as a stepping stool to where you want to go. And that leads me, Tony, to my next question is, why do so many families avoid talking about money and what problems does that create?
This question hits home. It's a common question that's always asked. What I've experienced with most family is financial mistakes are embarrassing. No one wants to talk about them, right? And especially share it among their kids and other family members. But I believe the more you can share today, the less mistakes your kids will make, even your family, your colleagues, or whatever, right? So it's better to share those mistakes to give them the tool, right? Give them the knowledge. But when you don't talk about it, everybody's starting from ground zero. Everyone having to figure out how to get around, you know, learn about investing, learn about taxes, learn about all these different things. It's better to have the conversation where they're young versus having them figure it out. Because who wants to figure it out when life gets hard?
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes when I would say back in the 20s, and you actually known me back in my 20s, but had navigation planning group been around in my 20s, I think I would have been navigating somewhere else in my life. But I want my viewers to know that when it comes to financial planning and not talking about money with your children or your family members or your loved ones, the consequences that it reaps when you don't. So it is safe to say, let's bring up this negative equity or whatever you have going on in your life with financially to bring it to the front of the line so we can know, hey, this is where we are and this is where we need to be. And how do we get there? And the answer is by getting a financial advisor like yourself.
That's true, right? Getting a financial advisor, getting someone that will make you uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
Mm, mm,
Because if not, you're going to find yourself in your 60s still figuring out life,
mm.
right? Life goes by so fast, right? One day in your 20s, next day in your 30s, then you're in your 40s, 50s. Next day, retirement's knocking on your door and you're not prepared.
Oh man, and that's got to be the scariest thing to even think about. I couldn't fathom not having a plan for when I retire, especially in today's age.
Right.
And before we even dive deeper into that, I would like for us to go to a quick commercial break. But when we return, we're going to talk more in depth about saving and planning for the future ahead. We'll be right back.
Every day they answered the call. They served, they protected, they sacrificed. When their final journey comes, they deserve the same honor they showed others. Firefighter Memorial Transport provides dignified memorial transportation for our fallen firefighters, law enforcement officers, veterans, first responders, and their families. Because heroes should never be forgotten. Your tax-deductible donation helps keep this mission moving. Donate today. Firefighter Memorial Transport. Honoring heroes, serving families, preserving their legacy.
If you want attention, you need more than an ad. You need a presence. Welcome to WWDBTV, your internet streaming TV station built for business and people. We create high-impact commercials and video podcasts with pro production. Then we help distribute your show where audiences already watch and listen. Your brand, your story. Broadcast ready. On streaming, on social, and beyond. Ready to be seen? Visit WWDBTV.com and book your production today.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Ricky Robotski Show. I'm, of course, Ricky Robotski, here with Antonio Jenkins with Navigation Planning Group. Today, we were talking about financial planning, and we were discussing before the break what happens at retirement. A lot of us here are planning or probably watching or looking forward to retiring, but do you actually have a game plan for your retirement? So, Tony, tell us, for independent people or people who don't work a 9 to 5 or people who don't work in corporate America, when it comes to retiring, what would be your suggestion for someone looking to retire and have that cushion that they all say that we need? What would be your recommendation for somebody like an independent worker or someone who actually has their own business to save for retirement if they don't have it already?
You know, if you're independent, one of the things that you have to take in consideration is that you work for yourself, right? When you work for a company, they already have things put in place like a 401k where they're matching it. So you have to save more as a business owner because you don't have that additional contribution going into your 401k. All right. One other thing that you want to take in consideration is because you're a business owner, you can double dip, right? You can contribute as the business owner and you can also contribute as the employee.
What the difference, or excuse me, what is actual double dipping?
Okay. When you are self-employed, you can create your own retirement plan and you can be able to contribute as the business owner, but also as the employee. And that allows you to make double contributions to get past the traditional limits.
Okay. And so that there contributing as double, does that play a very beneficial role as far as having your own, let's say your own 401k or your own retirement savings plan? Is
Yeah.
that
Yes. And you can also have the same features as if you work for someone. You can have the loan option. You can borrow against your own money. All right. So again, having this in place, you just have to be more intentional. You want to work with a professional like myself that are selecting the appropriate investments and making sure your account is growing, at least at an average rate of return. So make sure that you're never behind and your money is compounding.
okay? And so if someone, let's say, what do I say? I'm trying to base it on most of my audience. So some of my audiences or most of the viewers are actually retirees,
Okay.
and they've already most likely would have already had a plan or had some sort of plan in place. But for an employee that is retired and borrowing from your own 401k, your own personal retirement plan, what how does that work when you don't, like, if it's not somebody like, let's say Fidelity, for example, a 401k plan that you would typically would have to paying back yourself, how would that work being a private owner or an independent worker?
Yes. So you're allowed the same options in this plan where you can set up your own payment options to contribute whatever you took out back into the plan. You can also have alternative investments inside your plan as well. It's not just your traditional plan where you have just stocks and mutual funds and ETFs. You can also include life insurance in some of these plans as well.
Oh, interesting. And that is one thing that I wanted to jump on. I know that's probably not our topic, but I would love to have you again on the show to talk about life insurance, because that is something everyday people should be, and I'm really big on that, is that we should be very aware of what life insurance is and how it works. And I know that there's people that are watching that can reach out to you to discuss further. And also, ladies and gentlemen, if you are, or aliens, if you're watching this, you're able to put your questions in the comment, and I'll do my best to answer those questions or get Antonio to answer those questions for you. But I wanted to ask you a question. If someone was starting over today with little money and a lot of ambition, what would be the game plan for them?
Can you say that one more time?
If someone was starting over today with a little bit of money but a lot of ambition, what would be your game plan for them? What would you tell them?
First step, find a financial advisor like myself that can put together a plan, because they're so ambitious. You don't want them taking unnecessary risks. You want to have a well-designed plan that allow them to see their progress.
And I'm sorry, Tony. I think we lost connection again. What was that after progress? See progress?
So work with a financial advisor like myself that will create a plan that will put protection first and then investing second.
Okay. Okay. And that sounds perfect. But let's say in the event someone with little money, is there room to say that they couldn't afford a financial advisor?
No, there's an advisor out there that will work based on whatever they have in place right now. there's some advisor will just work on, for example, if they have very little money, they can charge just a flat rate annually. So they can work with that individual. It doesn't have to, it can be 1% of their income. It could be a very small number until that client gets to a place where they feel like, okay, now we're at a good place where I can charge you my typical rate for a client.
Okay. Okay. And then one of my favorite questions, and this is most likely the last question, unless you tell me something so inspiring that triggers another question. But this one is, what's one financial lesson you wish every child learned before graduating high school?
Wow. Learn the difference between assets and liabilities.
Mm.
Because the earlier you learn this information, the more assets you will acquire and the less liabilities, right? My kids, for example, understands why we own secondary properties, right? Why we own rental properties, right? Most kids don't have that information, don't know why you will purchase another home even though you don't live in it, right? My kids do. My kids understand the importance of owning assets because of, you get appreciation. There's assets that creates income, and then you can take tax deductions from them as well, right? So that, like I said, when you learn this information early, you will see less kids going out into the adult world buying expensive cars or buying unnecessary things. They will focus more on building assets.
Oh, and what would be, and you said, I heard you mention liability.
Yes.
What would be a liability?
Number one thing I see a lot is expensive clothes, buying cars that are unnecessary. Now, I know you need to get around certain areas, but again, there are certain things that I feel like when you purchase, it goes down in value.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I try to instill in, one, my siblings, and two, my younger generation that is growing up of children that are fascinated what we see on TV today, the rappers, the actresses and actors. They drive all these flashy cars, wear all these flashy clothes, but like you said, all of that depreciates.
It does.
And so my question is, all those things that really are just frivolous, how do we where do we start as far as a people to invest in things? What would you recommend, or what would you say as a financial advisor if someone were looking to just to start building that financial wealth or generational wealth? It's like, where do you start investing in? Like, do you invest in, first, is it buying a house? Do you invest in stocks? Do you invest, like, what do you?
So I would start with a brokerage account, right? I wouldn't necessarily purchase a house. A house is and let me be clear, a house, if you live in it, it's a liability,
Mm,
right? An asset is something that appreciates or it creates income. But when you're living in it, it does appreciate, but there's a lot of liabilities that come with it. You have ongoing expenses that just keep coming at you that never goes away, right? Now, if someone was staying in that property, right, that home, and they were paying you rent, that's an asset,
mm,
right? So for a lot of people, let's be clear, I love owning multiple properties. But when you buy a house, it does take a good bit of your cash flow. I will purchase, if I could do it all over again, if I would purchase a house, I would have other roommates to
mm.
help cover the expenses. But if you can't do that, I would say rent an apartment, right? Because you have lower expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Lower expenses allows you to invest, right? Invest into the stock market, right? Continue to invest and invest and invest. And eventually that account may create enough income to replace your income, right?
Yeah.
The goal is create an investment that will replace your income. And so if you want to go out and buy a nice car, cool. But you don't have to go to work every day to pay for that car. You have an asset that's paying for that car. Same thing for a house, right? For me, I would have purchased a duplex. I'll stay on side A and side B will be my tenant. They'll pay for the mortgage for both sides. All right. So again, being in the industry as long as I've been into it, I've learned how to leverage money, right? Money is a tool, but if you use appropriate, it can create more dollars.
And you hear that, ladies and gentlemen, appropriate. That is probably one of the favorite words that I use personally for my businesses, to making sure I'm making appropriate expenditures and making sure I stay on top of my everyday financial well-being. And there are so many apps out here nowadays where you can monitor your finances. Tony, do you recommend any of those at all?
I use a personal app, internal. It's called the Living Balance Sheet that my clients get to use free of charge with me. It allows them to track their expenses, see all their investment accounts, their life insurance, everything in one place. So they sign into one app for everything.
Oh, wonderful. And ladies and gentlemen, please, I would love to see all of my viewers tell me that because of this episode that they're feeling a little more secure about following their dreams and their financial future. And also, I would like for you to reach out to Antonio Jenkins here at Navigation Planning Group. And Tony, first of all, or Antonio, I would like to thank you so much for being a part of the show today and all of your expertise and all of the questions. These questions were actually prompted by some of the people that I reached out to, that wanted to know a little bit more about their financial future and their security. And you've answered all of these so well and eloquently. And I just can't thank you enough. And I would love to invite you back on the show again for a part 2 if you're willing.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate this. And so, Tony, before we go, if there is, do you have a line or a number that you want to throw out there, or that we could reach you at if we need any support?
Yes. You can reach me at 864-844-3464. Yes, there's a lot of fours.
And that number will be on the bottom of the screen, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
All right, Tony. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for all of your time and commitment to be on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks again for the invite, and I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ricky Robotski, and this is Antonio Jenkins, and we're both signing off.